Raiders Way, Bicentennial,
Mike, it's
Sparta,
freaking bad.
Sparta,
Is there
Yellow.
another out there?
Oh,
Oh, yeah.
There was that, Bicentennial, got raided around.
It was, yeah, it was so nice.
And it just had packs
It's blowing up.
Because one lady
I'm gonna mention.
forces
I'm
you
gonna
to
talk about it. Is it that time? All right. Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. It is the day after the election. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'm gonna go for a morning jog. All right, on-time drawing first. You know, on second thought. On second thought. On second thought. Let's just take a little moment of silence. There's so much happening in our world right now. Sometimes we forget, you know, something of that magnitude that took place just 20 some odd years ago. So just a moment. All right. Hard to get going after that, you know, but I will. First of all, I want to talk to you a little bit. Some of you know, some of you may not know. There was a post that went on Facebook yesterday.
Yes.
By one of our agents, and yeah, just want to let you guys know that clearly that agent's words do not reflect, you know, Realty One's thoughts in any way. You know, we try and straight from Cuba this morning. I just got a text from a message from him. We really like to lead with love. And that message, whether you agree with it or not, it didn't, you know, didn't say love. So just to let you all know, that agent is no longer with Realty One.
Oh. Thank you.
And I would like you guys to help me spread that word. When somebody posts something or somebody emails you or just let them, and just let them know, you know, that agent is no longer associated with Realty One Group. That's all that needs to be said. We don't need to get into anything else. It's just that agent is no longer with Realty One Group. Kind of like as we speak right now. I probably shouldn't have even, you know, been mentioning it this soon, but I felt it needed to be. Kind of that elephant in the room thing. Does anybody not know what the hell I'm talking about?
I don't.
Not out of our office.
I don't know about the post, but I got a good idea.
Half of you, that's good. Stay off of social media.
No, that's exactly it. Do you know what it is?
Yeah.
Well, I do, but not because of social media, just because I work here.
All right, Tricia's not here yet. She'll be back, I believe, so we'll come back to her. Karen Woodford with Inspirata is going to be telling us what's going on out there at Inspirata.
Okay, so good morning, everyone. You are my very last Inspirata presentation. We are in phase of the community. I've been on the project since 2015, so happy and sad times. We have less than 50 homes available, new homes available for sale. KB has about 37 in inventory, and Toll Brothers has 7, and then Tri Point has our neighborhood of Highview with 11. So if you have clients who want to see Inspirada, I would take them out now. So everyone knows, and I'm going to go through this really fast to keep to the allotted time. What makes us really different is really the park system. Regardless where you live in Inspirada, you can walk from one point of the community to the next through our trail system and our parks. The great thing with the parks is the builders invested in the parks. They actually built the parks and then dedicated them to the city of Henderson. Why that's so beneficial is the city of Henderson does an excellent job in maintaining the park. So the cost of maintenance does not go to our residents. But the other great thing with the parks is we have pools in 5 out of the 7 parks. And those are resident-only pools. They are issued a pass key to get access. And so our association maintains the pools. Centennial Park is the 7th and final park opening in Inspirada. We're doing a grand opening and dedication on November 12th with the city of Henderson. And this park will also have a pool, and it's in the last phase of development. Sloan Canyon, great recreational facility. Our residents can bike to, walk to, and see petroglyphs. Schools are always really important with your buyers. We have children who are school age, and we're really pleased to say we can take care of children from 6 weeks of age to 12 years of age. Law school choice, both public and charter schools are excellent education opportunities for our kids. Commercial and retail, Rhoda and I were talking about, you know, if you were into Inspirada when it first opened up, there's nothing along St. Rose, there's nothing really, there was nothing. I mean, we were talking about the first time I drove out to Inspirada, because I live in the Northwest, it's like, am I going to California? It's like, where is this place? And now we all, I think, experience that drive to Inspirada is very convenient, especially whether you take 215, 15 or 95. And we're really pleased, you know, to have some commercial services for our residents. Does anyone know the first retail that opened in Inspirada?
Can you guess the library?
Liquor World.
Yeah.
So home city.
The agents needed it.
Yeah, you never see libraries built anymore, so we're really pleased with the city of Henderson brought in a library. It's a smaller footprint, but they created to have a lot of flexibility with programming. They work with our residents to see what this programming is desired by the residents. And if you find a book, you know, some of us are old school, we like it tangible. You can go to the library, say, this is the book I'd like, and they may not have it at the library, but they'll transport it within 24 hours for you. Plus, police substations are always a positive, you know, they really give a look of a safer community, and the response time is shorter. So we are really pleased to have them in Inspirada. This fire station opened about 8 years ago. It's by Pike Crest Academy, and there is a new fire station. And it's just outside Inspirada, but it's on via Inspirada. So we're really pleased that our residents have 2 fire stations. Deborah March, this was dedicated to the mayor within Henderson. Really pleased to have a hospital. You know, I think we all find we're so busy, we drive so much. It's really nice when we have amenities and services close to home. So we're really pleased. This is opened at Raiders Way and St. Rose Parkway. Future school sites. So there are 3 designated sites within Inspirada. They've been accepted by Clark County, but they have not done anything with them whatsoever. They will stay future school sites even once our builders are out of Inspirada, and then Clark County will eventually determine if they're necessary. Inspirada Station, you know, there was news saying that they were supposed to start construction last November. The roundabout, the dog-bone roundabout, which was kind of, people loved it or hated, most people hated it, that got taken out and a traditional intersection put in. But Inspirada Station went and looked at, everything that they had going on, and they decided to put a hold on this, particular hotel, so there's no update on that. We had a Catholic church, come into the community. They're currently at, the high school doing, fundraising. And then our builders. So KB is our primary builder. They own 70% of the land. They still have 4 collections. The town-owned collection of Grove, the Gardens, 2-story, Landing, single and 2-story, and reserves. And I'm sure you've all been out there. The great thing with this is one-stop shopping. You can park in one lot and see 4 collections. Toll Brothers, this is a townhome Amiata collection, and they only have seven units left.
Did you say 70 or 7?
Seven, single digit. We really anticipate to be done by the first quarter of 26 with new home sales. Inspirada, our association, they have done an amazing job with our residents. They are just in contact with them all the time. Our community is really active. So I strongly suggest, if you haven't been to Inspirada, or you have and you're familiar with the homes, if you have families, or any of your clients, I would bring them out on the weekends. Because I think it's really important that we find where we fit, right? You know, some people belong in Summerlin, some people belong in Anthem, some people don't even belong in master plans because it just doesn't fit who they are. But if you come out on the weekend, you really get to see how the community lives and breathes. You get to see our residents out there socializing and mingling. We have a farmer's market, so it's just a really great time to experience Inspirada. And then you, please follow us on our social media sites. So any questions? Yes,
Do you have any 1 levels out there?
no,
No. Okay.
yes.
How much, do the townhouses start at?
I think, let's go back. 500,000.
And it looks like they have patios or something.
Yeah, they have rooftop patios, not all the units. Now, this is very, very similar to what is being built in Summerlin.
What's the HOA?
$85.
And then,
For everything?
Yes, now there's some sub-associations that there's gates. Like some of the Toll Brothers, they have their own, service, community areas, so they'll have additional. And then, Lennar is out there. Lennar, worked with our builders, and they're part of the, association, so they have access to the pools, which is wonderful. But when you go out there, especially if it's new homes, even resales, you do need to determine, are they part of the master plan or not, so your residents can find out if they get access to the pools. That tends to be pretty important. Yes,
Any seats and leads?
I'm sorry, what?
Any seats and leads, like,
Sis and Liz.
Oh, yes, yes, so I always refer to Inspirada proper, who I represent, so Toll Brothers and KB Homes will all have the lid. Lennar and, Tri-Point do not. So- Oh, do they? Okay, so if you're a buyer, that could be a make or break, right? You know, that SID or LID fee, so just make sure when you're in there, ask them.
Part of my ignorance, what is a lid?
It's an assessment fee, so when a master plan comes
It's
into,
a bond
yeah,
for
for improvement.
is it 5, 10, 20 years?
Yeah, it depends.
Okay.
How they structure it. Anything else?
Are you aware of any, I've heard rumors that they're gonna start opening up the land from behind Inspirada, all the way to the border, all the way to state line.
So, you
Are
know,
you aware of
that is
anything about that?
BLM, so, you know,
There's been talk of that for decades.
yeah.
Decades.
And
And
the
eventually,
city is
yeah.
spreading out, so it will happen. It's not like all of a sudden they're gonna build out the state line.
Well, thank you.
So another, thank you for Karen as well, because she was our breakfast sponsor, and, that breakfast was amazing.
Good,
So thank you very much.
good. Enjoy, everyone. Hope,
Thank you.
everyone has a wonderful day, and, come out and see us for at least one more time, okay? Come to our farmer's market.
What day is that, Saturday?
Saturday. It's the first and third Saturday of every month at Salisa Park. Okay.
All right, next up, we have Tricia from, American Home Shield.
Hi,
What
guys.
is-
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Phew, it's almost cooling off.
Oh,
Yeah.
it was so nice this morning.
Different.
And it was nice, I felt it, which means I almost can like breathe. I'm like trying to catch up. So thank you, I'm running a little bit late. I was like triple booked. Couple reminders. Over there, I'm seeing walls. Oh, couple reminders. American Home Shield, the things that were setting us apart. Make sure you have my number, right? Everybody has my number? Okay. On the house, Shield Complete. Things that why you want to go up to the top tier level. Everybody says, well, why do I want to move from the middle to the top? What pays for itself is the free rekey. Okay, who doesn't want new keys when you move into a house? I mean, who always gets new keys? Do you? I mean, I don't really like to move into a house and not know who has keys, right? So that's just always what I always say. Why do you want to move to the next one? And the other big thing is Freon. Okay, because I always get upset people when they see the Freon bill. Has anybody been on about Freon?
Yeah.
And I'm testing a pilot. I'll bring it here next. At the end of the month with Jim, we are doing an HVAC information session with one of our HVAC guys. And if it does well, it's the first time I've done it. One of my HVAC vendors, if it does well, I'll bring it here and he's going to talk about Freon. So if it does well, we'll do it. But the whole other reason we want to move up to the top plan, Shield Complete at $815, is for Freon. So Shield Complete, don't forget, comes with the free Freon. Military discount, 20%. I have great news. Keep it a secret, except I'm not really good at good secrets. Pretty quick here, we are going to extend that to first responders. Okay, is that gonna be awesome? We are the only home warranty company that has a military or veterans discount and soon to be first responder discount. Okay, so that will be our first responders.
Our secret.
Or what?
Our
I know, don't tell me secrets. I know, I'm like not good at secrets. Okay, and then agent renewal. So when if you guys get on to pro.ahs.com when you order your warranties, if you are ones that order them yourselves, we use tiles. All of our, when you log in as an agent, you'll see tiles. One of those tiles has agent promo, okay? And that means anybody that you've ordered a warranty, for any of your buyers that you've ordered a warranty that is renewing within the next like 60-ish days, it will tell you those people. And that gives you a chance to reach out to them. You can just go in and click it and push an email and it sends them an email that says, hey, Mr. and Mrs. Smith, your warranty's up, here's an offer for $200. But you can take it one step further because you're always looking for a reason to call your buyers, right? You're always wanting a reason to call them. And you can say, hey, you're coming up, and hey, you also just popped up in my little, well, you don't want to tell them why they popped up, but you just reminded me that it's time to renew. I have an offer for you for $200 off. So that's gonna pop up. Oop, go back one more because it had one more thing, I think. And don't forget, my phone is starting to get kind of busy. So if I'm ever not available or I'm taking a second, don't forget you have a direct line to concierge. Okay, you can put in orders, you can do an escalation. If you need a quick invoice because you're at the closing table and Anthony's telling you forgot to send an invoice in, you have a quick way to do that. Don't forget we have a 30-day guarantee, okay? You never have to pay again in 30 days. Don't forget we're the only ones with an app. Everything can be done on an app, okay? Why do we use the app? Two things. Two big things. Yep, I don't like talking to people. I don't like hold times. Okay, I know that's a big complaint. Who doesn't like to I want to speak to an operator, I want to speak to an operator. Okay, we don't have to do that. You don't have to do that there, but the biggest thing is, yes, it's like 2 clicks and you can put in a claim, but 40% of people are push the next button, are solving their claim and not having to spend the $100 on the service claim with the video chat. So if you call me on the weekend, I'm at my kid's soccer game and you're telling me something's leaking, something's not working, and your microwave's not, it's a federal emergency when the microwave's not working, I get it. I'm gonna tell you to call the video chat first to see if they can help you. If Charlotte was here, she'll tell you, they fixed her thermostat. She was almost about to do a claim and it ended up being something really stupid, she'll tell you, with her thermostat. And they fixed it on this video chat. Okay, American-based full-time employees just like me, okay, and they video chat normal business hours, but Saturdays and Sundays. They help me change and I'm very bad at the name, so don't tease me, but capacitor, what's that thing on an HVAC? With the help of my husband, capacitor.
Compressor.
No, I did not change a compressor, I'm not that good.
Capacitor.
That, what Mark is saying. They helped my husband and I do that. Okay, they're video chatting both ways. They make you turn your camera around, okay? That will help you. If your client calls you, Send them to video chat. You're at the title office, right? And you're waiting to close and you know they got an American Home Shield warranty and you're waiting for copies and all those things. Help them download the app while you're sitting there with that dead time. Hey, you got an American Home Shield warranty, let's download this. It's like any app, you're gonna have to upload the policy, you're gonna have to get a password, all of those things. We help also with things that are outside of warranty type issues. We help with them figuring out how to hang a picture, how to do grout, how to hang a door, how to fix a squeaky tile on the floor. Things that are just home ownership related. We wanna be that type of resource for your homeowners as well, okay? Get it?
Got it.
Got it. I think that's it.
That's it.
Okay. Oh, and don't forget the flyers on the veterans discounts in case you have veterans or military. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. All right, rev up's coming up. Hydrating the homeless, we're still collecting water. One cares. That was last month. Food truck out there, 11 o'clock to 1 or something like that. I don't know what it is. Never. It's food. Oh, I should have deleted that.
Should have deleted that.
Should have deleted that. Should have deleted that. I should delete that. Got anything to say?
Yeah, delete that.
I didn't delete you, Anthony.
It's all good, it's all good. Hey, update that headshot.
Although, I was just gonna say, we need to update that,
So I just want to keep it short because I know Tim's here. He's going to speak in a little bit. He's going to have a great class here in a minute. But I just wanted to go ahead and bring this to your guys' attention again, just because I was speaking in a class yesterday and I brought this up to consistent clients of ours, and they had no clue about these. So I definitely just wanted to bring this up for you guys. It's just the kits that we can provide for your guys' different situations. So we're able to send you a listing presentation kit, buyer consultation kit, open house kit, or if you have clients relocating from out of state or out of town, we have relocation folders for those as well. So all you'll have to do is just submit a request to me, whether that's over text, in person, email, and then we'll send a kit to the office here for you. Stephanie will go ahead and notify you guys that it arrived for you. For the listing presentation kit, it will come with a property profile with the note before you list. The note before you list is basically an overview of the prelim. And it'll tell you how titles vested, tax amounts for the years, mortgage origination amounts from when they purchased the home, as well as if there's any liens or judgments placed
And
against
here's the thing, if you need something like on Saturday, Friday at 5 o'clock's okay, right?
Oh, perfect timing. No, so yeah, we do ask though, when you do submit these requests, just give it around 48 hours just for turnaround time, just to be safe. Just so it's not that situation where it is last second. Obviously, you guys are submitting that request, asking for it within the next 12 hours. Because the run does take about, whenever we send it in the run, I think the run times go at 9:30, 11, and 2. And it does take about a couple hours to get over here. So if you guys are in a really tight bind, you guys might not be able to get it. We might have you guys pick it up from our office. But nonetheless, you guys can always request those from us. Usually they do come a little bit sooner than 48 hours. I just always say that to be safe. But I will pass out these flyers as well. So if you guys have any upcoming listing presentations, buyer consultations, or any open houses, we'll be able to provide you materials for them. Make sure you guys are ready to rock and roll. But nonetheless, with that being said, if there's anything in the marketing realm you guys would like to talk about, sit down, cover, go over a little bit of niche marketing plans, I'll be more than happy to help you guys out. I'll be here all day. My office is back there.
Tim, as Anthony said, has a class right after this.
That's good.
I get that updated. How's everyone? Good. Show of hands. Who is not using ChatGPT?
Who's not using ChatGPT? Someone said they don't know what that is.
It's okay. Thanks for your transparency. ChatGPT has reached 100 million users faster than TikTok, faster than Instagram. It's all around. The big companies like Realtor.com are putting it into their platforms, so there's no getting away from it. So if you want to learn a little bit more, hang out with me right after the presentation today, for the meeting. If I can shave 1 to 2 or 3 more hours off of what you do weekly. And what you do weekly is what? Writing, listing, details, emails, social media. Let me save you some time. Hang out with me for 30 minutes or so afterwards. Talk about ChatGPT.
Awesome, thanks, Debbie. Sean's not here, stats, they'll be in your social media. With that being said, we have Jamie Rodriguez. She's the, as you all know, we just recently had legislature, every 2 years is the legislature. And so Jamie here is the NVR Government Affairs Director, and she's going to talk about all of the bills that directly affected, there's a lot of bills there, but there was certain bills that they were tracking, and these are the ones, what happened with them and how they affect our industry.
Perfect, thank you so much.
Thank you. Welcome, Jamie.
Thank you. Alright, so let's jump into the fun pieces of it. So we do meet every other year in the state of Nevada. They meet for 120 days, which seems really short, which has some good and bad to it. Ultimately, I think it's good, not to pick on our federal partners, but if you look at the federal government and the ability to just kind of keep kicking the can down the road and we'll do a budget next time, okay, maybe the time after that, okay, maybe the time after that. We can't do that in the state of Nevada, right? We have 120 days. If you don't get it done in 120 days, it doesn't get done. So there's some good to that. It does also, though, result in a lot of kind of chaos of what gets done and how it gets done and what gets included and what doesn't get included. For our state legislature, we've got the 2 houses, the Senate and the Assembly. Senate has 21 members, the Assembly has 42 members. The reason I'm putting party there, what's really important to appreciate, as I'm going to talk about some of the bills that got vetoed. Democrats were 1 seat shy of a supermajority in both houses. Why that matters is if a governor vetoes a bill, but there's a 2/3 vote, they can override that veto. So when I'm talking about some of the bills that got vetoed, and there's some pretty significant bills that we're very appreciative of the 8 bills that Governor Lombardo vetoed, it is important because without that, those bills would have become law and they would have been pretty detrimental to our industry. Overall through the session, we had a little over 75 bills that we watched and monitored throughout the session. 8 bills that passed were vetoed, and then there's 22 bills that became law that'll impact kind of the Las Vegas LVR membership. So you may have already, or you will be getting, I have 2 handouts. This is a little bit more than 22 bills. But when you look at it, you'll see there's a couple, right? SB 319, which we won't cover because it only impacts Washoe. So there's a couple bills that we're not going to cover that are on some of these sheets. But if you do have questions and you want more detail, let me know. I've got a stack of cards out there. We did do a final summary of kind of all the legislative bills that went through this session in written form if you want those as well. There we go. So we'll start with the really fun one, rent control. If you're not sure, you're not really familiar with the impacts that rent control have on the industry, I strongly encourage you to go to truthaboutrentcontrol.com. That is a campaign that we at Nevada Realtors did. We got a $1.5 million grant from NAR to help support that effort to show what rent control really does to the industry, right? Rent control, and like just the sound of rent control sounds great, right? Like who wouldn't love to know exactly what your expenses are going to be or the max that they could be increased, right? When you're talking about some of your more expensive bills like rent, if you're a renter. The catch to that is once you cap it, you are now essentially removing the idea of any sort of investment, whether that's buying the property or doing any remodel or updating of that property, because you're not going to be able to gain any of those funds back. So it really does hurt the market. It sounds great for renters. It really doesn't help them in the long run. It causes more issues in all the areas that we've seen rent control go into effect. It has not been helpful. And so you're seeing investors leaving. You're seeing all these changes. They're really not positive. So we had 2 bills that actually got through the legislative session. So when I talk about vetoes, these are the important vetoes. Governor Lombardo vetoed both bills. First bill, AB 44, was not just realtors or real estate or rent control. It was introduced by our current Attorney General Aaron Ford, and it was related to the fair trade practices. So what they were saying in the bill is the amount of growth for a price or increase in a price should be based off of the 5-year rolling average. Anything outside of the 5-year rolling average would be open to investigation from the Attorney General's office to determine if you had in fact violated the Fair Trades Act. I think the best example to kind of think of with this, right? We all remember when like egg prices went through the roof and crazy. So your first vendor would have been investigated to explain why their prices went up while the rest of the market kind of caught up, right? So this was anything that you use in your everyday. So food, housing, retail, so this impacted grocery stores. It impacted, you know, H&M or Macy's, right? And there was a lot of conversation of what do you do if there's a big drop in the market and then the market bounces back? Now the market can't bounce back because we're using the 5-year rolling average. It's just really not, it's not a fair gauge of determining what appropriate prices are. But again, another one that would just, why would I increase or invest in my rental property? Because well, I'm justified in increasing my rent, right? If I buy a house and I completely renovate it, it's got brand new flooring, brand new roof, brand new AC, brand new heater, all brand new appliances, right? It is decked out. I could only have raised it 5% of what the rolling average was, right? Or I'm sorry, whatever the percentage is for the 5-year rolling average. So if the 5-year rolling average is 8% increase, that's all I could do. I wouldn't be able to make my money back, right? It doesn't help. So we're really, really appreciative that that one got vetoed. The second bill really was specific to rent control. So it included some provisions that are in another bill that I'll talk about, so we'll kind of skip the beginning of the bill. But it did include what they're considering a pilot program for rent control. So it would have been from July 1 of this year till December 31st of 26, so 18 months, of a 5% rent control cap for any senior or anybody receiving federal assistance. I think there's 2 reasons really that we oppose this. One, we'd had some conversations this session before, kind of coming out of COVID, maybe we can help the seniors a little bit. The market's really not where it was coming right out of COVID when we were discussing this at the end of 21. And the second problem is an 18-month pilot period for rent control isn't gonna show you the real impact of rent control, right? Everyone's gonna have maybe one increase, but most leases, right, are 12 month and then it's month to month after that. So you wouldn't even have a re-up of most of these leases. So it would give people who are pro rent control the ability to say, look it, we did this for 18 months for seniors and nothing happened, so we're gonna make it permanent, but that's not a fair gauge of understanding what those actual impacts of rent control are. So that bill did also get vetoed. AB 258, so this was our bill for Nevada Realtors. Do you have a question?
Yeah, and currently there's no cap on, rent increases.
Correct.
So a landlord could increase by any percentage, whatever he wanted to do. That's what I thought.
Yeah, so there's no cap. We firmly believe, right, the market kind of dictates that, right? If you go and you increase your rent to some degree by which nobody's going to pay that, you're going to have to adjust your rent, right? Because you're gonna have to decrease it to get that in. But I think a lot of times you see, you know, even apartment complexes, right? Somebody buys an old apartment complex, they totally renovate it. And so now those rents go up because now it's totally renovated, right? You've got a brand new outdoor space, it's painted, you've got all, right? If you do that, you should be able to increase your rent, right? It's a better environment that the tenant is living in, and you made an investment that you obviously want a return on your investment, right? It's a business, it's not charity. So 258, so this is Nevada Realtors bill. This came out of the NAR settlement, so this is regarding brokerage agreements. So in state law, if you had an exclusive brokerage agreement, that had to be in writing. All other agreements could be written or oral. Starting October 1st, all brokerage agreements have to be in writing. This protects both sides, right? So there doesn't become a he said, she said, wait, I thought we said 8%, wait, I thought we said 5%, wait, I thought we said, you know, this term, no, that term. So effective October 1st, all of them have to be in writing. I know most people already practice this, but this is putting it in law for anybody who wasn't. They will now have to have all of those in writing. Oh, and then this is our, if you're not familiar with these lovely faces, very quickly, this is our current president, Brandon Roberts. This is Cynthia Moore. She's a new, this was her first term as an assemblywoman. She is a realtor champion for us. She's a realtor down here in Las Vegas. That's the governor, Joe Lombardo. This is our incoming president, Sarah Scatini, excuse me, and our legislative chair, Azim Jessa. They were at the bill signing since it was our bill that we brought forward. Housing assistance. So we had a handful of bills that kind of went through that do a multitude of things. So the first one, 8366, it's kind of a housekeeping bill, but it does help us in the long term when we talk about state money to help with housing assistance. So the first one, currently, Nevada has the Nevada Supportive Housing Development Fund. That's a current fund that exists every 2 years. The state argues over how much money is going to go into that fund, right, so that they can help fund. It does a multitude of things, right? It does some development, it does some of the payment assistance, right? Like there's kind of a multitude of things that account does. What that bill did is it changed it from a fund to an account, which seems like a really minor change, but here's what that does. What that does is at the end of the fiscal year, which we have 2-year fiscal year, right? Every 2-year session, every 2-year budget. What we've seen happen, right? Let's say there's a project that's been approved and they've been approved for $100,000, and just for whatever reason, because government works slow, sometimes development works slow, right? If that's not done by July 1, really you're talking closer to like May when session's in session. If that's not done, that money is considered left over in the account and it reverts back to the general fund. So if you miss that deadline, now you're having to go back through the process and reapply because those funds are no longer allocated to you because we're in a new system and a new cycle. What this does is it says any funds left in that account at the end of the year stay there. They don't revert back to the general fund. So it helps make sure that we don't lose developments just because they happen to just be on the wrong side of the calendar or hit some sort of a hiccup or delay. So it seems like the minorest of changes. It really will help with a lot of the development, especially when you're looking at things that, Clark County and the southern governments are trying to do in Reno of helping build some of that kind of middle housing, right? Those people that are kind of fresh out of the homeless shelter that are trying to get on their feet but can't really afford the last deposit of a traditional rental or apartment complex. They're trying to help build some of that middle housing. This is what helps build that middle housing. Second one, 8475. So this gives some eviction diversion program funding. I know there was an article in the Review Journal. I don't remember what day of the week it is right now. It was earlier this week, talking about the number of increases of defaults being filed, right, for homes. So this is eviction, so not bank defaults, right, but it's not a great sign for the economy, obviously. But so this gave $15 million to Clark County with eviction diversion funding. So I think another thing that's really important to look at, because there's a lot of talk about this eviction diversion funding and whether it helps, right? Are we just kicking the can down the road and they just can't afford it and we're just postponing it a few months? What they found is, in doing studies, is they track individuals for 5 years after they get the assistance. It's like 85% don't come back. 85% were people who really, month to month, who had one bill, a car, a hospital, right? Something happened. They had one bill that made them unable to afford their rent, that got them in this cycle, that this help makes it so they get back on their feet and they don't need it again for 5 years. So these funds really do help. They really are a benefit. I know there's not everyone has an alternative version to that, but I think there's a lot of people who think that. And as they're doing more studies, we're finding that's not the case. So $15 million to Clark County, that's just Clark County, is a huge help to them. The second one, AB 540. This is the governor's housing bill. I can't go into everything because it does about 18 different things. So I'm just gonna highlight some of the things that it does do to help. So this will now create the Nevada Attainable Housing Account. So money goes into that account. Once it goes into that account, it also never goes back to the general fund. It stays in that account forever. Part of the reason for that is that this fund is built to work as a loan program. So it's not, so the first one that I talked about, right, like that's just money to help with the development, right? You need $100,000, here's $100,000 towards that plan. This says it's a loan. So anybody who applies for it, they have to do 50% of the matching funds. So if it's $1 million project, they have to have $500,000. They'd be asking the state for the other $500,000. But it's $500,000 as a loan. So what that means is that fund is also constantly replenishing itself with the idea that hopefully we'll always have money in that account to help. So it can be used for loans, grants, rebates for affordable housing, financial assistance programs, acquisition of lands. There's also an ability to use some of these funds as an interest rate buy down. Is anybody familiar with the HUD loan program? So this is similar to that, but now it wouldn't have to be HUD properties, right? So it wouldn't have to be rural properties, be anything, including in the urban areas.
But then would that also apply for new construction?
Yes. Yeah, so this would be able to help actually build those properties.
Okay.
There's an annual report that they'll have to do that'll go to the interim finance committee, so it goes to the legislature every year, talking about what loans have been given, what projects, what percentage of built they are, and how much of those loans have been repaid. So there will be an annual reporting of all those funds to make sure that it's very public where these funds are going and how the program is working. It also, if you do have anybody who, I know we said that property management isn't a kind of a big piece of your guys' work here, but there is a provision that the housing division will now help create a program that either landlords or tenants can use so that the tenant rental payments are able to be reported on their credit reports, right? So if we can increase credit reports, their credit report scores, right? It makes it a lot easier to buy a home because you've got a lower rate. There's a benefit to that. It's really hard for a lot of the mom and pops, right? Because you have to pay in to report to Equifax or, right, any of the credit reporting agencies. And then how many times you report also changes what they require you to pay. So doing this through the state means that it'd be voluntary. It's still not a requirement, but it would allow people to say, hey, I'm a renter, I want it reported on my credit report, to build up my credit report, or hey, I'm a landlord, right? I think this would be really great for my tenants. I would like to use this, but I can't afford it, and they can use it through the state system to make it an option, but something that's not a financial burden on anybody to do.
Lisa, question.
Yes.
So, was it AB 540? Is there a specific agency that manages 540?
So there's different pieces. So the first one that I talked about is a new group. So the first thing, the Nevada Attainable Housing Account, that's new. So there's going to be a council that is appointed under the governor's office to manage that account. And then this program, the credit reporting, will be under the Nevada Housing Division. So it's not one group overseeing all of it.
Yeah, the last thing you just talked about regarding having the renter's credit reported to the three bureaus. So I've got 3 rental properties, and I've got investors also who have kind of mentioned this. How do I get more information on it?
So as soon as the housing division creates the plan, we will be getting that out to everybody. I think one of the things to always appreciate with legislation is the law gets passed, but there's always a delay to figure out how to actually implement that law. So the housing division has to create the program. I would guess probably sometime next year, if I'm being honest. Because they're gonna have to figure out how are they gonna build the program, who's gonna oversee it, how are they gonna administer it, and then open it up for people to actually use it. So I would guess about a year, but there will be more. As soon as that's available and up and running, we will absolutely be letting everybody know.
I think it's a great thing.
It is a really, really positive thing. There was a bill that was introduced by the state treasurer to try to do this, but the way that it was drafted was really hard, and it was gonna make it a mandate. And so this makes it optional, right? So it's not a mandate on landlords to have to do it. But it is, right? Like if you can increase people's credit report, that's a good all around.
Especially
So,
with rent.
yeah.
Huge expense.
Jamie, is this only for residential, or are you able to build, say, your business via corporate, like a commercial?
Commercial rent, it does, no, because this is going under the housing division, so it would not be for commercial rent.
Okay, just residential.
Yeah. Okay. I think one of the other big ones, which may not have an impact here, but it could, for folks who were here post-recession when development started kicking off again, right? There was oftentimes a problem of finding the workers to support that development, right? There weren't enough construction workers to do the work. So one of the things that this bill does is it allows for, if they're able to give an exception for that development, right? So you'd have to apply and say, I've got this development, but I can't get the contractors to do the development. It would allow them to get an exception for that project to allow workers from licensed workers from another state to come in and do the work for that project. So that projects aren't held up because you can't find the workforce to actually develop it. This is this, in all fairness, was geared much more towards like Elko and, right, Ely and some of the more rural areas, but it's not restricted to just the rural areas. So if there were a large development, the workforce couldn't be found here in Clark County, they could use that program as well to say we want to be able to bring in licensed contractors from Utah or Arizona or California to come over and make sure that the development gets done on time. Questions on that one before I move? No, okay. Taxes. So first one, this is a great one. AB 377, this is a really beneficial one. So when you, right, somebody buys a new house, at some point after they buy the house, they used to get this fun little postcard, said, hey, is this your primary residence? Is this a commercial property? So we can determine, right, what your property tax rate should be. People lost them, they didn't see them, they forgot to send them back, or they waited too long, or the timing just kind of over conflicted, right, of when they got it to when they sent it back to when the first tax bill came out. So what this does actually is, so now what'll happen is at escrow, at the close of escrow, that form will be in the packet. So it can be filled out at that point. So when all of that paperwork goes to your county recorder for the sale to be recorded, the recorder's just gonna walk down the hall and hand that paper to the assessor, so it's immediate.
That's great.
So it's not a mandate that they fill out the form at close of escrow, but obviously there's a huge benefit to having buyers fill it out at close of escrow. So we are really, really excited about that one. It's kind of one of those, like, I don't know why none of us thought of it before, 2025. But we're there now, so that's a really, really helpful one for new property, for each kind of property transaction. AJR 1, so Nevada is very unique that our property tax structure is primarily in our Constitution. And with that, it means if you ever want to do a constitutional change to the Nevada Constitution, it's about a 7-year process. So if you do it by ballot initiative, right, we're just going to do a quick, if you do it by ballot initiative, you have to pass 2 elections. So you may remember most recently we had 2 elections where there was a ballot question about open primaries and ranked choice voting, right? It was on your ballot twice because it was an initiative. So in that case, you have to get through 2 election cycles, so that's, right, 3 or 4 years. Then it has to go to the legislature to determine how exactly they're going to implement it, and then a year after that, right, for it to actually be implemented for all the back-end regulation and all those changes to be made. So it's a 6 to 7 year process. If you do it through the legislature, it's a similar timeline. It has to pass through 2 legislative sessions, then it has to go to a ballot for a vote of the people. It goes back to the legislature to figure out how to implement it, and then you've got a year from there. So this was a very long-term process, but it was the start of it, which was going to take away depreciation attached to the property. So it was going to reset depreciation at point of sale, which would significantly impact people's property taxes.
Heck yeah.
Right?
That's terrible.
Yes.
Yes.
So we feel it's unfair, right? Depreciation exists for a reason. An older house is going to have more expenses, right? You're going to need a new roof sooner. You're going to need a new air conditioner, heater, all those appliances, water heater, right? All the things. Because older houses wear down. They all have some sort of lifespan. So we're very glad that that one failed. It did not get through the legislature, but we're highlighting this one still because the discussion of property tax is not going away, right? All of our local governments are having financial problems. The recession really hurt local governments, right? It took 10 years from the recession for them to build back up to what they were collecting at the point the recession started. But you also had 10 years of population growth in that time, right? So they're still behind. So we obviously live in these communities, right? We want paved streets, we want cops, we want firefighters, right? We want safe drinking water, we want sewer lines to support development and homes. So we got to figure out how to help our local governments. This just wasn't the solution, but we expect this conversation to come back. So we're highlighting that we don't think this is it, but the conversation isn't done and over and should be coming back. Couple quick little fire ones. AB 376. This is a really fun kind of creative solution or plan to address some of the homeowners insurance problems that we're seeing. So this creates a 3-year plan of a regulatory sandbox. So what that means, if you're a current licensed provider in the state of Nevada today, right? So if you're AAA, and there's programs you offer through AAA, but you can't offer in the state of Nevada because it doesn't meet the regulatory requirements in Nevada, there's a 3-year period by which they're going to say, they have to submit it to the Division of Insurance and say, I would like to offer this program, this plan, for people to buy in the state of Nevada. That will then open that market for people to buy that insurance, right? So we've got more options, and tools kind of available to us. At the end of the 3 years, Division of Insurance will look at those programs and those plans and figure out what regulatory changes do we need to do so that we're not saying, hey, we're the government and here's the solution. Hey, market, catch up. We're kind of doing it backwards and saying, hey, market, what do you have that can help us fill this gap? And then we'll adjust the regulatory and government piece after that so that it's something that becomes more permanent. It's not the silver bullet, but it's a really great option to figure out what does the market have. I think a lot of the insurance problems and questions are probably going to be done at a federal level because we are far from the only state who are experiencing difficulty in either finding homeowners insurance or finding affordable homeowners insurance, right? So that's not just us. SB 319, it just expands some of the fire compacts that we're in so that if there is a fire, we've got more resources we can pull from them faster, and we can pull for them at a better rate than if we had to pull for those resources now. Development, AB 241. So this is a really cool one. And I apologize because I should remember what the name of the store was. That's always the example in Las Vegas. I apologize, I'm from Reno, so my brain goes to the building in Reno. Essentially what this says is if you've got a commercial building, right, that you can now go through your local government and by right change the ordinance of that property from commercial to multifamily or mixed use with residential, right? So you can all, I'm sure, think of some sort of, you know, commercial area that's been vacant. It's been vacant for a really long time, and nobody's done anything with it. You can now transfer the zoning for that and do multifamily or mixed use with residential. It does have to have some residential, but right, we can hopefully do some more infill. It's going to help more with affordable housing probably than luxury housing, right? But they have the resources there. So part of the problem with affordable housing is always, you usually have to go kind of far outside of town to find affordable land, but then it doesn't have any of the support for that affordable housing, and so those programs never work terribly well. So this is a great option to kind of make some housing more available, more expedited, where resources already
That's a
exist.
state ordinance?
Yes,
I think that's just commercial, not industrial, correct?
correct, it's just commercial. And the local governments do have until March 21st to.
Does it matter what, because there's various commercial zoning, there's commercial office, commercial retail, there's C1, you know, is it just any commercial?
So, the local governments have to pass an ordinance, they have until March 1st to pass that ordinance. Because obviously, right, there's gonna be a little bit of difference of the zoning types in Clark County versus Washoe County versus Elko,
exactly.
right? So the counties will have to do it, but it does say commercial building, any commercial zoning has to be able to be considered.
Got it.
So does that answer?
Yes, yeah, no, I understand.
Okay. So again, just a really cool option to hopefully help build some infill. 396, oh, this is the ADU bill. So this only applies to Clark County and Washoe County, and then within Clark County, it also applies to Las Vegas, Henderson, and North Las Vegas. So this is related to ADUs, or accessory dwelling units. We're Dillon's real estate. What that means is the authority of the local governments is the authority granted to them by the state. So this is an example where the state has come in and said, right, obviously they have the ability through zoning to determine the ability to permit ADUs. This created some more guardrails that the local jurisdictions have to use in making that ordinance to allow for ADUs. So one of the things is, right, like, so they can no longer require more than one parking spot per ADU. Now, they're allowed to say if the ADU is, you know, a 3-bedroom ADU, you can do that, right? But there was by default, there were some jurisdictions that said all ADUs need to have 4 parking spots. So if it was a 1-bedroom, you'd have 4 parking spots, you're not gonna be able to get permitted because you're not gonna have the parking, right?
It wasn't one parking spot per bedroom, it was just flat.
Some of them had minimum parking standards.
Wow.
So this just kind of creates some of those guardrails of what they have to put in that ordinance to make it a little bit more. They cannot prohibit it from being a rental, but they can prohibit it from being a short-term rental.
Oh, okay.
So
Can
this,
it have its own meter?
it doesn't have to. It can, it doesn't have to. And some of that again is going to be based on the local ordinance.
Right.
But they can't, part of this does state that you cannot require, right? You can't require new sidewalks. You can't require, I mean, some of the things that some people
Yeah, some of the stuff that's typical with a new build.
Right. So this goes into effect July 1 of 26 to give those local jurisdictions the time to draft those ordinances. I came, prior to coming to work for the Nevada Realtors, I worked for Washington County for a handful of years. So there's a fun provision that they put in this bill, which might be one of my new favorite ones that I've seen, which states that if the local jurisdictions do not pass an ordinance that meets the requirements of this bill by July 1, anything can be built, any ADU can be built without any permit. So not to pick on my local government friends, but right, sometimes those just didn't get done, or they didn't get done in time, and they said, fine, if you drag your feet on this, because we gave you like a year, they get to build whatever they want without any permit required for it.
Washington, Clark County?
Washington, Clark County.
Get off the pot.
So, Reno just passed theirs, Washington County's was already in compliance. I think the city of Sparks is gonna have to, because they did not allow for it to be rentals. But Reno didn't have any, so this was needed for Reno. But Washington was already in compliance, so it's gonna be kind of everyone down here now. AB 476. So this is a bill, if any of you have stuff within HOAs, you may remember this, the construction hours for HOA complexes, that during the summer months, right, they got to start at 5 a.m. so that they could get a full day's worth of work in. This now expands it to everything. So long as the projects are further than 300 feet from an occupied residence.
Oh.
So it can't be your neighbor, right? 300 feet. But from the months of April 1 through September 30th, they have to be allowed to start at 5 a.m. so that they can get a full day's worth of work. This was going to be an OSHA requirement, so this just kind of got ahead of it. And it only applies to jurisdictions who had an ordinance that restricted that, otherwise they could already do it, right? So it is kind of a Clark-Washoe thing. I think Carson City's got a construction one. Most of the rules don't, so it doesn't really impact them. It impacts us. But again, this already applied for all HOAs. That got passed 2 sessions ago. It's just now not just HOAs, it's everybody to allow for those OSHA compliance pieces to make sure that people can work and get a full day's worth of work and not slow down those developments. Okay, I'm gonna run through these ones pretty quickly because I know that this isn't really your guys' bailiwick, but just so you guys kind of know, I already talked about this. That's the one that was gonna require credit reporting, AB 68, so we'll skip that one completely. AB 458, this one may be mute. I'm gonna tell you what it is in case it doesn't become mute. But it did allow for some solar powered affordable housing projects to get some abatements and be able to participate in net metering. The reason I say that this may be a mute point is because some of the federal funding to help support these solar programs just got cut. So it may come back, it may not. If it doesn't come back from the federal side, this doesn't really do anything. So we'll kind of keep an eye on that to see if anything happens. SB 130. So if you've ever had an issue where you needed to hire a handyman, or you thought you needed to hire a handyman because you didn't need a licensed contractor, finding a handyman, A, was difficult, or B, heaven forbid, your project was like $1,100, right? Because the max for a handyman is $1,000 of labor and materials. I used the fun example, half of my fence blew down last fall. That was more than $1,000. And all of the fencing and concrete materials to rebuild that fence. So what SB 130 is doing is it's creating a restricted contractor's license. So it's creating a middle between your handyman and a full licensed contractor. They'll still be under the contractor's board to make sure, right? But it's kind of creating that stepping stone. But they'll be able to do work up to $7,000 of labor and materials. So part of the problem has been that getting people to pass the contractor's license or test has become almost impossible. A lot of it they are learning is language barriers. So while they're reworking that, part of it also now is going to be this new licensure type to help people kind of get into that process and get more familiar and have a little bit more of that background to get a full contractor's license, but also to help with that gap of, right, I think it was $1,200 fence, right, that I couldn't hire a handyman, that I would have had to hire a contractor. My poor family got sucked into that one, just so that I'm not making it sound like I broke the law by not using a licensed contractor. Right, but if you needed that in-between job, good luck, because finding a contractor who's gonna do a $1,300 fence was not going to happen anytime soon. AB 270, if you ever deal with evictions or any sort of servings from the sheriff or the constables, those prices went up minimally. Those prices had not been increased in like 20 years. Nothing major, right? So a summons was $17, it's now $26. There was a per mile fee that was $2, it's now $3. If you do a summary eviction, it was $21, it's now $26. So nothing major, nothing breaking the bank. but just kind of updating those fees because they hadn't been updated in 20 years. SB 436, this is a bill that failed. It was going to create a landlord registry, which for the record was just a little bit crazy in what they wanted. So I'm just going to quickly list what was required to appreciate why we are super happy that that one failed. So it would have required the name of the landlord, the state and county in which the landlord lived, the total number of dwelling units owned in Nevada, the address of each dwelling unit, the amount of rent charged for each unit, the frequency by which rent is charged, the name of the property manager or real estate broker associated, if applicable, and if you had a tenant when you filed this annually, right? So, kind of crazy, but I also point out, like, if I was a renter, I'd be really mad because I don't think it should be public of what I pay every month, right? If I've been in that place for 5 years because I've got the most fabulous relationship with my landlord, they haven't increased my rent, I don't want that public for somebody to come in and go, Jamie's only paying you $1,500, I'll pay you $2,000 for that unit. Right? You're just hurting the renters. I think with the amount of information they wanted, it just wasn't good policy. So we're really happy that that one ultimately did in fact fail. We're gonna go through these ones fairly quickly. AB 121, this is the tenant transparency bill. So it really does 3 things. First thing, it says if you collect an application for a tenant, right? So I want money because I'm gonna do a background check or a credit check. If the landlord or a property manager, whoever, right, whoever's accepting that application, they don't do the thing, right? So I don't run the credit check, they don't run the background check, and they rent it to somebody else, they don't get to pocket that money.
Good.
They have to refund it.
That's great.
That was part of the real estate division, but there wasn't any teeth to really support if people weren't following it. They can now be charged civilly. So if they collect it and they don't do it and they keep your money, they can now be charged civilly by the person applying to say, you took my money, you didn't run my credit or my background check, right? That's obviously a problem. People shouldn't just be pocketing those funds.
Where's the proof that they did it?
Well, you would know if your credit report,
Yeah,
if your credit or your background check was run,
Yeah.
right? So you would know.
Privacy notice.
Yeah, you get
Maybe it's
notification.
a
That's it.
notification.
Can I ask you something? So what if, just because they want to pocket your money, what if they do run it but ultimately rent it to somebody else?
That's fine. You have to not run it.
That's the bill.
So if you ran my thing and I'm not the best applicant, right, or I'm not qualified,
But what if they already rented it to somebody else and then they run your credit?
you can't do that. You can't rent it after you've already, you cannot run it after you've rented it to somebody else.
It's
You
not
can't.
make sense. If they've already rented it to somebody else. Right.
So there's still
That's the
ways.
hard part to-
I mean, let's be real, there's no law that's 100% concrete that nobody's gonna figure out a workaround,
Yeah.
right? Now, you may still be brought to court and the judge would, you would be required by the court standards to supply all the information of when you rented it, the date of that lease, and when you ran their report. The court would be able to prove that you did it,
Yeah.
right? So how do they know on the front end is questionable, but if you did that, the court would be able to determine that and you would be guilty.
Yeah, 'cause so many of them take multiple applications.
Yeah.
And they still can, they can still take multiple applications, right? Because usually you have like a period that you have that application open for, right? So it's open for a week or 2 weeks or whatever, and then you kind of run them all, right? And you find the best applicant, you can still do that.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the other reason that it's, you didn't run it and you rented it to somebody else. So what you can't also do as a tenant, I can't apply for your listing on Monday, and then on Friday find a way better deal with somebody else and go, you didn't run it yet, I want my money back. So you have to do both. You have to not run whatever you collected the fee for, and you have to rent it to somebody else. So they can't just turn around 2 days later, a day later, a week later and say, I want my money back because you haven't run it yet. So the property manager, you're gonna have, both have to apply. It's an and. You didn't run it and you rented it to somebody else. I think there's another hand. No? Okay. Kind of part B of that is you cannot require background checks or credit checks on minors. Which feels super weird to say out loud.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna put it on my apartment complexes, but it's the only example that I've heard of where they would require an application from every resident in the unit. So if you had an 8-year-old kid, you were paying an application fee for a background check and a credit check on your 8-year-old kid. I'm not saying they were the only ones that did it. I'm still only examples I've heard of. But now it says, you can't do it for minors, so if you've got kids, nobody can charge you an application fee for your minor children. So that's the first two pieces. Second piece, well, 1.5. Second piece is that if you have a prospective tenant who says, I want a copy of the lease agreement, because I don't want to just know that my rent is $1,800, I want to know the parameters of that rent. You have to give them a copy of the lease. They have to be able to look at what all those other parameters of the lease would be, only if they ask for it. So you don't have to give it to every single person. If they say, I'm really interested in this, but I'd like to look at it, I'd like to look at what the lease agreement includes, you do have to provide it if they ask for it.
This is before they even apply.
Yes, this is a potential tenant. Last piece, which is fun, how really mixed reactions that we get from this one. Landlords now have to provide one cost, or what the cost of that rent will be. So you can't say it's $1,800 in rent, but there's a $100 landscaping fee, and there's a $30 trash fee, and there's, right, you can't have 30 fees that add up to $2,100. So you have to have one set price when you, on the lease agreement, right? So what is due monthly, whatever that regular monthly amount due to that tenant is one number.
Okay.
Now, I know that there's some concerns about that, right? Because it's gonna look like everyone's rent increased immediately. What I would remind you is this really serves both sides. So I use the example, and there's been lots of examples of, right? So let's say my rent or my lease includes all utilities, right? So mine's $1,800, but somebody down, a couple units over, theirs is $1,500, but it doesn't include utilities, right? Now, those are, at the end of the day, probably gonna be kind of comparable, but most people are gonna look at it and go, $1,800, wait a second. Oh, okay, it includes utilities, and okay, wait. Ooh, $1,500, oh, but now I also have to pay utilities, right? So that breakout still exists, but if I can't afford $1,800, I need to know that the total is $1,800 and not have you listed at $1,500 and there be $300 of additional fees due every single month.
What about deposit?
So it's just your regular monthly fee. So that does not include, right, if you've got late fees or penalties or your deposit, that's not included.
Or even cleaning deposit, that's
Right.
a refund.
It's the
deposit.
one, it's your reoccurring monthly rate, whatever you're collecting every single month, that has to be one cost.
That's the pet fee, that HVAC fee, yeah.
Yeah. So, right, so, and I've spoken with a couple of the local associations, because I know they're updating their lease agreements, right? You can break it out if you wanna break it out. And if you've got like a pet fee component, right, you're probably gonna wanna break out, like your rent was $1,800, but you've got a pet, so it's $200, so now you're $2,000, right? You're gonna wanna break that out, because that's not, you didn't increase the minimum, or the maximum, I'm sorry, right? They just have like this supplemental component that now that fee is different. But, right, again, if you've got whatever that amount is, right? You still break it all out. You can say, hey, the base rate's only 15, but with the 18, we're charging you, right? That includes all these other pieces. So that's all in one place.
Question.
Yes.
Question. So that's just on the lease agreement.
Mhm.
Yeah, 'cause I see it's, on the MLS, that's where they get cute. They're like, oh yeah, rent's $1,800, and all of a sudden underneath, like, oh yeah, $2,500 for this,
Yeah.
$30. So that can still
It
stay in
can.
place.
I'm gonna say, and I've warned all of my lovely property management groups about that.
Might as well do it.
Be careful.
Be careful with that, because all they're gonna do next session is say, well, now you're advertising it for a different price, and then they don't know until they've applied, and now they're signing a lease agreement, and they're the exact same position that we were trying to address with this bill, and they'll add advertising. They didn't. The intention is, right, 15, 18. I can afford 15, so I'm applying for the 15.
Right.
If I would have known it was 18, I would have never applied for it, because I couldn't afford 18. And if it's not transparent and upfront at the beginning, it hurts both sides, right? Now you have a tenant who can't afford the rent, and I'm in a 12-month lease for a place that I can't afford to live in. So it really is better on both sides to have that amount up front. Now I know lots of people don't want to advertise it at that rate. That's the next step. So I cannot tell anybody what to do. I would strongly encourage that you advertise it for whatever's gonna be in your lease agreement, with some of those exceptions like a pet fee, right? But then you
Or trash.
But you would, Yes.
What about those concierge fees for the air filters?
Yeah. That's
If
HVAC. Yeah.
it's a monthly thing, it's gotta be included in that total amount.
It is.
So.
You cannot charge a monthly fee that is not totaled in whatever that price is that you list. So if you say 2,000, you can't say, oh, but there's also this $30 filter, like, man, it's $30.
Okay, so what are you saying about the MLS? You cannot have those extra fees in there,
So
or
you-
you have to equal the rent?
What I would tell you is that I would match the lease, which if the lease is gonna say my base rent is 15, but I've got all these other fees that add up to 18 or whatever that number,
Right.
whatever those numbers are,
Right.
I would advertise it at that total number.
Gotcha.
Because otherwise what's gonna happen is, there's gonna, all those people that, right? Cause
Don't read.
Yeah.
they're all gonna hear about this bill, and they're gonna go, cool, that one's 18, I can afford that. And then they're gonna apply, and then they're gonna get the lease, and they're gonna go, what the what? And they're gonna go to the legislators again and say, hey, I thought we fixed this.
Yeah.
But they're still advertising it for 15, and I couldn't afford 15, and now I paid an application fee, and I've waited this time, and I couldn't afford it in the beginning. So that's,
Yeah, cause I'm having that problem right now, cause I do a lot of rentals, but I do go over every fee from the MLS, cause like you said, they'll say 18, and they'll say, but you have 25 sewer, this, and residential, another 30, and then what?
Yeah.
They go, well, what's my total? Then I add it up for them, but yeah, that's not fair. I like this, that they have to put that fee on there, cause it's just not fair to these people.
no, and this is more appropriate.
Cause they want 3 times the rent, so they can afford 3 times the rent at 1,800, but then they start adding all the others, and they're like, well, I'm not at 3 times.
Now I can't afford it, right? So like I said, it hurts both sides, not all the time, but there's gonna be times that it hurts both sides. So this just makes it, I'm getting a tenant that can afford it, you're getting a place you can afford to live in.
Yeah.
It serves both sides. Advertising is not required in the bill, but again, if those keep not matching, that bill will be next.
When does that go into effect again?
That goes into effect October 1.
That was October, okay, perfect.
Yeah, that one's October 1. The other piece of this bill stipulates that, the second part, that's where we started trash, and I got sidetracked, and I apologize. I didn't get sidetracked, you guys had more questions. Let me go back to the trash question. So there is one piece of this bill that does talk about variable fees, right? Because what considered variable fee kind of changes depending on property manager. This now states the only variable fees that can be charged back to the landlord are gas, power, and water.
Do you mean back to the tenant?
Yes. So, what that means, if you say, hey tenant, you're in charge of getting your own water, power, gas, trash, doesn't change anything, right? A lot of single-family residence landlords like to keep those utilities in their own name, or if you're an apartment or a duplex, right, you keep it in your name, because you may not have 2 meters. So if it's something that's billed back to the landlord, right, and then the tenant has to pay it, those are the only things that can be included in your lease as a variable. So you can't, so if you were a landlord and you had trash in your name, and the trash rate changes, that is not an allowable variable fee.
Until the next lease.
Until the next lease. Or they get it on their own. If it's under their name, their responsibilities, right? If you do like internet, TV, and all those fun things that they're just always responsible for getting. It says the only variable that a landlord can charge back to themselves, right, that keeps in the landlord's name, that the tenant pays back to the landlord, are those 3 variables. Everything else has to be a set
Which is
fee.
water, power, and gas.
Yep.
Is that because those follow the property and not the owner?
So it's because, this was one of those really weird fights, if I'm being honest, because they didn't want to allow for any variable. We're like, wait, but there are landlords, right, who most of them have had a terrible experience, right? A tenant who didn't pay the water bill, but it's attached to the house, and now all of a sudden they left, and then you find out, right? So there are some landlords that like to keep those utilities in their name, and we kept explaining, right? I can't tell you what your water bill's gonna be every month.
Right.
And I can't even use it based on the last tenant, right? You could have a 2-bedroom place that is occupied by 1 person. That water rate's gonna be way different than if you've got a 2-bedroom and it's occupied by a couple and a kid, and there's 3 people in that house, right? So you can't say what that rate is going to be to say your power is X, your water is X, right? If they wanna keep it in their name. So that's why those are the only, and it's because it's based on usage, right? Trash isn't based on usage, it's a flat rate. Now that rate may change, but it's a flat rate that's not based on usage. So those are based on usage, which is why those ones specifically can still be variable if they're charged back to the landlord. Last piece on this one. You have to provide your tenant one free option to pay their rent. So a lot of places use like online platforms, right, to pay their rent. Those tend to have surcharges or some sort of a fee associated with that. You can still use those, no problem with using those. But you also have to give them an option that doesn't have a surcharge or a fee by which they can pay their rent.
Really?
Yes.
That's good.
So it is a good one, right? Because there were some, I mean, you know, you always get the extremes during the hearings, but there was examples of 15% surcharges for paying your rent.
Wow.
10% surcharge to pay your rent, 10% fee on every transaction.
Use your debit card or credit card.
Right? So, I mean, that's not fair. So this just says you have to have one free one. If you do use some sort of a platform, you can only charge back to the tenant whatever that platform charges. So the example given was that there's platforms that like it's a $3 fee, and just for the landlord to make an even number, they would charge them $5. They're just kind of pocketing too. Can't do that now. So if the platform charges $3, the tenant is charged $3. You can't increase that or charge some separate amount from what the platform uses. Okay, so I'm gonna do this one really quick because it's kind of complicated and weird. You guys don't do property management, so this shouldn't really apply to you, but just so you guys are aware, people ask about it, especially if they're buying like older properties that are a little bit damaged that they want to turn into rentals. So what this bill, AB 211, does is it changes the standards of habitability. So if a tenant has a complaint about a habitability issue, right? Mold, pests, pick your poison. I use mold because I feel like it's the easiest example, right? So I call my landlord, I'm like, I got mold. And either the landlord doesn't respond, or the landlord comes back, which I know nobody does this except for like, you know, those horror stories. The landlord comes and paints over the mold and goes, no more mold, you're good, right? What this now says is that that tenant would then go to their local government. So if they're in Las Vegas, they're gonna go to the city of Las Vegas. If they're in Clark County, they're gonna go to Clark County. They're gonna go to their local government and say, hey, I've got a habitability issue in my property. Their code and safety folks are gonna come in and evaluate it. This is good for two reasons. One, it's not mold. They're gonna come and go, that's not mold. You just got some like weird dirt on your wall, just like it just needs to get cleaned off. Right, but if it is mold, they're the third party that comes in and says, no, you've got a habitability issue. They then contact the landowner, the property owner, and say, hey, you've got mold. Here's what you need to do to remediate it, and you need to contact us as soon as it's done.
Nice.
Now, if it doesn't get done, or it doesn't get done to the standards, either of those two options, they will now file with the court.
On the tenant's behalf.
Who's they?
They would be the local government.
But who in the local government is doing this? What
So,
office?
they're code safe, they're code enforcement folks.
Code enforcement.
Is most likely who's going to do some of these, right?
And
depending on what the
that's
issue is, because depending on the issue, it could be like your health district, not code enforcement, depending on what the habitability issue is. So it depends, right? They're gonna call the local government, they're gonna say, what's your issue? They're gonna tell them the issue and they're gonna send out the right department.
For free?
Yes, there's no cost for that.
Okay.
So, right, so it doesn't get done, now the local government files with the court. And I apologize because I forget the apartment complex down here, but we had one very similar up in Reno, right? Where you get these dilapidated apartments that the city's got. All the cities can do right now is fine you. Hey, get rid of the mold. Hey, get rid of the pest. Hey, get rid of this. You have landlords that are just like, yep, add that to the tab, like, whatever, until they finally have to be condemned, right? That doesn't help anybody. So now what would happen is they would go to the courts, say, hey, we've got this habitability safety issue. The court will then come in and determine if there's a habitability issue. Does it exist, right? Has it been addressed? If not, the court will then come in and say, hey, either you landlord deal with it, or if they don't, or in the circumstance where the landlord has ignored every other warning up to that point, right? They can hire, the court can assign it to a third party who will be responsible for getting bids to determine the cost and hire the contractors or whatever workers are required to do the remediation, to make the home habitable, and then the court will bill it back to the property owner.
And what time frame are you looking
There
at?
isn't a time frame. There's a reason for that, but there isn't a time frame. So there was a lovely bill, 223, which we are very happy also got vetoed, which was going to put a timeline of 7 days for all for specific habitability issues to be addressed.
Oh, shit.
And it was going to remove the good faith effort right? So if it's 10 days, and let's say my air conditioner went out, and I contact my landlord comes out and says, okay, right, we got somebody to look at it, they're ordering the part, they'll be back next week, and it's taken them 4 days to get somebody out there, I could file with the court. Say, my house is not habitable, because it wasn't fixed in 10 days. So the court couldn't take into consideration that the landlord had been out, had somebody look at it, and had ordered the part. And the landlord would have been responsible for it not being a habitable situation. So we really didn't want timelines in this because we said each circumstance is going to have a different impact on what that timeline should be, right? If it is something that is egregious, obviously, right, local government's gonna get on it a lot faster, right? That the court hearing is gonna occur, right? Like their timeline is going to be different. Versus if it's something minor, like you got ants in your kitchen and the landlord just isn't, you know, sealing the cracks that the ants are getting in, right? One of the big pieces that this kind of gets stuck on everybody with, oh, I forgot the most important piece. I'm jumping around because I'm trying to do these fast. This only applies to multifamily residences. Single family residence, this does not apply to. This is your apartment complexes, your duplexes, multifamily. If the tenant has to be moved out while the remediation happens, the landlord is responsible for those costs. Now, the catch to that also though is, if the court is able to show that the tenant is responsible, so I'm gonna go back to my lovely example, I got mold. If I have mold in a bedroom because I used it as a green room and I made that thing as humid as it could get so that my plants grew, I got mold, but I'm responsible for that. Property owner still has to do the remediation, but they don't have to pay for me to move out. The purpose of this bill is to make sure that properties are habitable. It has little to do with the tenant other than the tenant starting the complaint. So if the tenant moves out, let's say it's their fault, the city, county comes in and goes, well, God, how'd you get all this mold in here? What have you been using this room for? And they start realizing it's their fault. They may move out. That doesn't stop this process. The purpose is that the property should be habitable. Where people live should be habitable. That's the intention of this bill. And it put the courts in there because all jurisdictions have had those properties that they find them and they feed that, like they do all the fines and all the fees and they're out there all the time. And the property owner just goes, great, add it to the tab. Great, add it to the tab, add it to the tab until it becomes condemned. They can't do that anymore because the courts would step in. 250 is a really small one. It now gives the defense of coerced debt. So if you are the victim or you have a victim of human trafficking, domestic assault that has some sort of lease agreement, right, that they were talked into in that position of being a victim, it does not necessarily alleviate them or allow the summary eviction to not move forward, right? But it allows them to say, hey, I didn't just not pay, right? Or this wasn't just in my name. Somebody put this in my name. I was forced to sign this document, and it's handled a little bit differently. We'll skip 214 or 114, excuse me. That's just apartments. Both of these bills got vetoed. This is for summary evictions. Here's a bunch of summary evictions. We're really happy those both got vetoed. Corporate ownership. Really fun discussion. You guys are really kicking it off down here in Southern Nevada. A percentage of properties owned by commercial ownerships. So there's been a couple bills, right? There's been talk about limiting how many properties corporations can own or taxing them differently, right? Really what this all boiled down to is, can you even track a corporation? So if you're gonna tax them or you're gonna limit them, how are you gonna track that, right? The state doesn't have property, like the list of property owners. They don't necessarily have all the corporate owners for those corporations, even if they got the list of corporations that own property. So can you track that? If you're gonna do a cap, can you track it? Can you create a cap? If you're gonna tax them, can you track them to tax them appropriately? What does that look like? So corporate ownership will continue to be a conversation. There's doing a study between now and next session to figure out what would that look like or how would that possibly work.
You can't use the tax record.
But it's built to the corporation, so no, not really.
A little LLCs.
Right, but
somewhere.
Right, but if you file an LLC outside of the state, we don't know who the members of that LLC are, right? So if you do the 100-unit example, on 100 units, right? Me and partner A, we own 100 units, and now we've hit 100, and that's the cap. You know what we're gonna do? We're gonna go open corporation B, or buy another 100 units. And then we're gonna hit that 100 and we're gonna go create corporation C and do another 100, right? Because if you can't track the corporation, it doesn't matter. Because that corporation can get around it.
Yeah.
So that's why we have to track it.
Yeah, during the COVID, it was figured out 30,000 homes were bought by BlackRock.
Right.
How did they figure out that?
So, and you can find that out through property records, right? But again, right, there's mom and pops, right? You can own 2 rental properties, you're putting that in a corporation. So if you just do it by corporations, that number is not necessarily a fair representation from like me who owns 2 properties that put it in a corporation versus BlackRock, right? And that was done, right, not statewide. So if you're gonna do a state law that restricts it statewide, the state doesn't have that information, that's all housed at the counties. So the counties can do that look, right, because there isn't a restriction right now, so they can kind of start some of that work. But what that is in Clark County versus Washoe County versus Carson City versus Elko versus White Pine, nobody has that data. And again, to the example of who's to say I'm not an owner of 15 different corporations or an investor in 15 different corporations for which I've exceeded whatever the threshold is that's created. So we're just trying to figure out, right, if we're gonna do something, what does that look like? Because there's no point in creating a law if all you have to do is like some extra paperwork to get around it. These ones very quickly, AB 10. So this is out of an HOA in Henderson. There was an HOA down here in Henderson that their sewer kind of went kaput. The HOA didn't have the money to do the remediation, so the city of Henderson stepped in and did it. Afterwards they went, ooh, there's like not really a legal authority that says we can do this. So there's a bill now that stipulates that if an HOA has a sewer or water issue that they can't afford, the jurisdiction can step in and do the work and then bill back that HOA. So it's just making sure that if it ever happens again, there's no question of the authority of the local government and to be able to come in and make that place safe.
Isn't there another community in Henderson going through the same process?
Yeah, there is.
I think there is one that just, yeah. So again, the city of Henderson will come in and do it. They'll bill it back to the HOA and the HOA is gonna have to pay back. 192, this is a boring one. It's easements. There's a fun thing about easements, that if you wanted to move an easement, you could potentially make your neighbor pay for the movement of the easement because they were the one using the easement. That now says if you move it, you have to pay to move it. You can't move it at no cost to you. 492, this was another fun cleanup. Anybody can put their own property into a conservation easement. Fun fact, governments could not. So if the city of Henderson owned a piece of property and they wanted to put a trail through it, so they wanted to do a conservation easement to make sure that trail system worked in perpetuity, they actually didn't have the authority to do it. So this just now says that governments can also put conservation easements on property that they own. Can't put it on anybody else's property, but on property that they own, they can put a conservation easement on their own property. 370, this is a minor one, but it does have some headaches. So if you are trying to sell a manufactured home, a mobile home, or a commercial coach, you don't have the title, right? That process of hopefully, maybe, possibly getting a title to sell that thing is a nightmare and a half. This creates a new process that requires them to be able to issue them within 45 days of receipt to actually issue the new title. If they are unable to issue it for some reason, they have 10 days once they realize that reason to give you a written notification, say we can't issue you a new title because X, Y, or Z, right? So that they know that one. 480 that got vetoed. There was a HUD requirement that allowed for disparate impacts to be a violation of the fair housing. What does that mean, right? So a disparate impact is that I have not created a policy that is specifically highlighting one group of individuals, but through practice may in fact target a specific group of individuals. So examples oftentimes given, right? I say that part of your lease agreement is that the cops can't be called on your property more than 5 times in a year. Okay, that kind of seems not terribly crazy, right? However, if I'm the victim of domestic assault and my ex-boyfriend keeps showing up to my house and I keep having to call the cops, I shouldn't be penalized. I didn't do anything. So that practice essentially is creating, right, a disparate impact of a profiling of a class of individuals. HUD got rid of it at the national level because they said, well, it's not the worst practice, it's too impossible to define, right? To determine if somebody has violated it or not violated it. There was talk about putting it at the state level. The governor vetoed it, saying if the federal government can't figure out how to define it, there's no way we're gonna be able to figure out how to define this. And it's a great concept, but until it gets worked out, it shouldn't be law.
Jamie?
Yeah.
We need to wrap up.
I know, last one, I promise. And this is like 2 seconds.
Okay.
SB 160, so this was gonna move the Nevada Equal Right Commission under the Attorney General's office, but it was going to allow them to do any sort of investigation on discrimination practices in housing. So it would have essentially made almost anything that would have been civil potentially criminal under the Attorney General's office. And currently the Nevada Equal Rights Commission is its own independent entity. That bill got vetoed because they said it shouldn't be under an elected official. It's impartial for a reason, it's on its own for a reason. There needs to be that separation so it's not changing every 4 years of how that's interpreted. So that bill ultimately got vetoed. So that's all of them. Like I said, if anybody wants, you guys have this. If Mark wants to email it to you, it's the links to all the bills, so you can read the bills. If you want a fun summary, my cards are out there, email me, and I will email you guys the full summary of all the bills.
Where's your card?
It was on the table out there.